Hello, everybody, and welcome to week one of the National Football League. Thank you for joining us here on the Kelly Green Hour. I'm your host, LG Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co host, Connor Donald. Connor, we finally made it. This long, hot summer is, we're in September now. I'm happy. I'm glad this long, hot summer is over, and let's get to some real games, not that preseason crap we had to watch the last couple of weeks. Let's get the games that count. And let's see if this Philadelphia Eagles team has been able to turn the page. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. I am so excited. It's so long, and like I always tell myself, I'm gonna watch all this preseason football and react and talk about it. And at the end of the day, I watch some of it and not all of it. And it's really like from 10 years ago, it has just gotten so much harder to watch that
They're
it's
definitely
almost
you can definitely tell the NFL is trying to get rid of preseason
they
games.
would like to.
Obviously, when they go to 18 games, they're going to go down to two preseason games. Um, and I think if the NFL had it their way, they just wouldn't do it. But obviously, they're going to pay for what is it, 10 home games now, I think you get when you combine regular season and preseason. So they're still charging. I don't know if it got to the point there were no preseason games. I don't think that like these joint practices, teams aren't going to want them televised because in those joint practices, you can actually like put plays out there that you're not going to do in a preseason game if you want to. So it's definitely going to be intriguing to see how things go in the future as the preseason games start to dissipate.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think you still need a couple because there are like we saw like a guy like
I
Thomas
mean,
Booker
college
was
doesn't
never
do preseason.
no, but like a guy like Thomas Booker was never making the roster without the preseason that he had. So like there's guys who get the opportunity. So I almost think, you have to have a preseason. I mean, college rosters are a lot larger to begin with, so you can carry a lot more. If I'm not mistaken. So I mean,
You can.
ultimately, you could do it that way in the NFL where you have larger rosters, but I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. I think there's a reason to have a couple games and give some guys a chance who have maybe been shining and might be able to usurp somebody on the roster. But it will be interesting to see what happens. I mean, am I going to watch much of it? Not really, but I get
I
enough of
will
it
because
to
I'm
know
a
what's
sicko.
going on. I know,
I
I
will.
know. We were gluttons for punishment when it comes to preseason football, but now we're here. We got a 53-man roster. We have a practice squad, and we are heading towards a game that it seems like no Eagles player actually wants, but is going to happen. So here we are, week
Well,
one in Brazil.
we're going to talk about that. I think that's a little overblown. Before we get started, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LGHarrell54. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Connor mentioned it. We have a 53-man roster. Um, so for this episode, we are going to get through a lot in this hour or so that we're going to talk to you guys. We're going to briefly touch on the roster, give our predictions of each division, playoff teams, and who our Super Bowl matchup is, and then jump into the Eagles Packers game and give our predictions for that, which we will do every week like we did last year. Last year was a little different. We had things happen to where we couldn't do a show every week, or one of us wasn't here. But we're hopeful that this year we'll be able to get all 17 of our predictions and see who the winner is at the end. All right, Connor, you mentioned it, the 53-man roster. What was your biggest surprise? Was there a surprise for you that came about? For me, honestly, there wasn't really a surprise. Thomas Booker making it. Yes and no, a little surprise. Them claiming Byron Young and getting rid of Martin Tuilelopu, who ended up signing to the Chiefs practice squad. That was a little bit of a surprise. And it's not the Brian Young from the University of Tennessee. It's the Brian Young from the University of Alabama. The one from the University of Tennessee was good last year for the Rams. I think he had like 8 or so sacks. This Byron Young had like 4 tackles and played in like 6 games, I think, for the Raiders. I think that this may have been more of they're going to play a lot of like it's primarily a 3-4 defense, we can call it. I don't think they had a true nose tackle behind Jordan Davis. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what they hope Byron Young can be, to help spell Jordan Davis a little bit in the middle of that defensive line. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my thought was like the Dylan McMahon not making the roster. I felt was kind of surprised. No backup center, really. Like, I mean, I guess like whatever you can say, Keegan can move in, Tyler Steen can move in. Like, but they didn't really take like a true backup that they
I
used.
think McMahon is going to be called up from the practice squad.
I
No,
well, I think he'll be called up and eventually he ends up making the
yeah,
roster. But the fact that he didn't make the original 53 man would have been my surprise. I was kind of saying Thomas Booker would make it from like week one. I was like, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of depth here at defensive tackle if he can continue to do it. And then after week two, I was like, man, he's locked. And I know I remember that episode. You thought it was a little crazy that I had him locked, but I was like, we just don't have that much behind. And it goes to show you we didn't have much there when they moved on from Marlon Tupeludo for Byron Young, just like that. A completely unproven former third round pick. So granted, he had a pretty prolific collegiate career and he came in and after one season with the Raiders completely disappointed to the standards that they were hoping. So maybe the Eagles are hoping to pick up the pieces from that career at Alabama and turn him into something as a depth rotation piece in this defense. Who knows? But that was a bit of a surprise move too. But I think the biggest surprise to me was like Cam Jurgens is taking over for the first time ever, and you have no real backup center. Like that kind of surprised me. I thought they would go. It felt surprising in general how heavy they went defensively versus offensively, because usually we see them a little more balanced or even a little heavier offensively, just purely because of that offensive line and how much we know they like to protect some of those offensive line pieces. But most made it through waivers, made it back on the practice squad. So clearly, how he made a lot of the right decisions. Well, I mean, I guess that's yet to be fully seen, but he made the right decisions insofar as they all cleared waivers and he was able to get back who he probably wanted to get back.
yeah. The one big one, I'm surprised that they didn't bring Josh Jobe back unless they tried to and he just didn't want to. He ended up going and signing with Seattle's practice squad. You mentioned it. They signed 28, kept 28 on defense, 22 on offense. And again, I mean, in my prediction, I said 25 of each. I got 49 of 53 right, I think. And I originally had Steen, but then I thought Steen would start on the IR, and he made the active roster. So there's that. And they kind of went light on the inside, I think, of the offensive line. They have a lot of tackles. They don't really, like you mentioned, we already mentioned they only have the one true center in Jurgens. McMahon will probably get the call up, the first couple of weeks before signing to the practice squad. On the defensive side of the ball, I had James Bradbury making the team. You did not. And then, of course, first practice, he gets hurt. It's out like 8 weeks. So there's that. Now they're really light at the safety position. We know CJGJ, Reed Blankenship. Avonte Maddox can probably play back there a little bit. They have Caden Stearns on the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken.
They have Tristan McCullum that made it.
Yeah, Tristan McCullum made it. And I think we both have had him on the roster. Yep. Sidney Brown's going to start on PUP, so he has said that like he's going to be ready to go once that 4 weeks is up, which they have the bye week 5, so he'll be able to play a 5th game of the season, which after the bye I believe is the Cleveland Browns. So getting him back will help the secondary with depth at the safety position. So I think that they're light at the safety position, so that will be intriguing. And we know that CJGJ has injury issues. Reed Blankenship had some injury issues last year, so hopefully, crossing fingers, they don't have any issues there when it comes to injuries at the safety position.
No, I agree. They're definitely light there. I just think that they're going to lean a lot into the versatility of players, and that's kind of how they're going to work the middle of the field and especially the safety position. So I think we all react like they're really light there, but how they're going to operate there is probably going to be different than what we're used to, and will allow like a Cooper DeJean to get in there a bit. Sidney Brown, when he comes back, McCullum will get mixed in there. Maddox will get mixed in there. Bradbury, when he's healthy, will probably get mixed in there. So there's enough pieces there that they'll be able to mix and match and probably make it work. Because I think I said it on that last episode, CJGJ and Reed Blankenship, as much as we may loathe Reed Blankenship on this show, those two guys are likely going to be on the field 80% or more of the time. and you're not really going to have to worry about the backup safety unless injuries happen. We're probably not really going to have to worry about the safety position unless those injuries happen, because I think that they have all the faith in these two guys being the guys that can run that safety position for as many snaps as necessary.
Well, it is a concern with the injury thing, though, because I think CJ played 2 games last year, so it's definitely a concern. We cross our fingers. He got hurt 2 years ago when he was with the Eagles, still led the league in interceptions, but missed like 6 or 7 games. So it definitely is a concern. Any other position that stood out, or any other players stood out on either side of the ball before we jump over to our predictions?
I mean, I'm just looking through, like, not really. Nothing was really surprised. I felt, and obviously because they went more on the defensive side of the ball, I felt they would give another wide receiver a chance. And again, they're rolling with 5 wide receivers. Of course, Paris Campbell came back on the practice squad. He would be my likely call up as a backup wide receiver, like a 6 wide receiver that may come up and down. So, I mean, it was a little surprise in there, but clearly they're putting all their marbles in based on the contract extensions with Brown Smith and then the trade for Dotson. They're putting all the marbles in. These guys are going to be on the field almost all the time as well. And we're not going to see Johnny Wilson, Britton Covey, or whoever we call up from the practice squad. We're not going to see them out there very much, barring injuries, of course. But I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm more confident that if Brown or Smith goes down and has to miss a game or two, I'm more confident with Jahan Dotson stepping up than Quez Watkins stepping up. So, I mean, at least we're better in regards to that, but we're still really light behind that. And Oren Burks being the first call up when the Bradbury injury happened. I mean, I didn't foresee that being the call up move. I didn't think Burks did all that well. Thought it was fine to bring him back to the practice squad. He knows the defense. He's a guy that, he has a skill set that Vic Fangio likes. I just think that there's other areas that they could have made that call up more worthwhile and more valuable.
And they're also light at tight end. They only have the 2, Goddard and Calcaterra. We know they signed Stoll back to the practice squad, and they signed Jenkins. Goddard did started practicing again this week, so that's a good sign going into Brazil, and they're leaving, I think, Wednesday. So as long as everything was good today, and get going tomorrow, they should be good to go, or he should be good to go. So hopefully he's fine, and we know he has injury issues too. So it's kind of surprising that they're light, but like you would think that Jenkins or Stoll will get a call up. Paris Campbell and Dylan McMahon. I'm not saying all 3 are going to dress, but I think that they're the 3, because you can call up as many as you want, right? It's not just 2.
I thought it was 4 that you could protect, or whatever you call it. Yeah. I think it's 4.
Okay. So at least those 3 I think are probably locks for this week, and then going forward, we'll see what happens as long as there's no injuries. But yeah, so look, this is a good team. I think it's a very top-heavy team. Depth, it's a little light on depth at certain positions, so that's going to be what is going to be worth watching going forward. And as long as there's no injuries, they should be fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is top-heavy, but you could kind of tell that it's come in the past. Like, I mean, this is a heavier team than I think Howie's put together in the past. But you can tell that he wants to put a lot of faith in the guys that he paid, and he wants to see those guys out on the field and used as much as possible. So I think that that's what we're going to see. And I think that was kind of the concept that he was rolling with, is I gave A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, C.J. G.J. I gave these guys, Bryce Huff, I gave these guys money. They're going to be on the field 90% plus of the time in every single game, and as long as there's no injuries. So I think they're putting a lot of reliance in that and in staying healthy, which is, we know, for the Philadelphia Eagles, that has been fine some seasons under Nick Sirianni. And in other seasons, we've seen it be the implosion of our entire season. So it'll be really interesting to see how this goes. Like you said, this is a guy who pushed all his chips in, and he's not looking to the next hand. If we're talking like a poker, blackjack reference, he's got it all in on the table and he's going for it. And if 2 or 3 injuries come up to some major players, like you said, we're going to be having some very different discussions come those weeks. But for now, we go towards week 1. For the most part, sounds like a fully healthy roster. Anyone who was missing time heading into the third preseason game or coming out of the preseason was back at practice today. So fingers crossed that there's nothing to come of any of that. And we come out fully healthy from Brazil. I always hate these travel games. It always feels like, they're unpredictable. You don't know what the conditions are like, the field's like. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what it does to the body. We usually see some injuries coming out of those Europe games. Brazil, not as far as Europe, but still, it's a trek, and we still don't know what it's going to be like. But I mean, we do play on the MetLife field, so I guess anything could be better than that. Hopefully,
yeah, that's true. And it's not FedEx Field anymore. I don't know whatever the Commander Stadium name is. That field's also trash too. All right, let's jump into our NFL predictions. What we're going to do, we're going to quickly go through each division. If you have something to say, you could say to give your 1 through 4. Then we will give our NFC and AFC playoff teams. Depending on what time looks like, we'll run through the wild card, divisional, and conference championships. If not, if we don't have enough time, we'll just do who's going to face off in the conference chip and then who's going to face off in the Super Bowl. All right, Connor, you ready?
Yes.
All right, let's start in the AFC. We're going to start in the AFC West with the defending Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. What do you have the AFC West looking like?
I have the AFC West going to the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me. I don't think there's a whole lot there. So I got the Chiefs, I got the Chargers, I got the Broncos, and I got the Raiders. Not much to say about this division. It's pretty much been the Chiefs to lose. The Raiders didn't do enough this season. The Gardner Minshew show I'm not bought into. Chargers, I mean, the division's not that good. So I think that they're the better team between the 3 other teams. And then the Broncos, I'm still not bought in or there yet with the Broncos. But this is the Chiefs, and I don't have either of the other 3 teams making the wild card.
Yep, I have it the same way. I have Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. Chargers will be a little bit better with Harbaugh. I also think that Harbaugh's going to dilute Justin Herbert a little bit. They're going to be a ground and pound type of team, and they're not going to really want to throw the ball, but they did get rid of all their receivers pretty much. And the receivers that they do have kind of can't stay healthy. And I know they all got hurt last year. So I have the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders in that order. Jumping over to the AFC North. I think this is going to be the best division in football. I have all 4 teams finishing over 500. I have it Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. And I have the Ravens and the Bengals making the playoffs from this division.
Got it the exact same way. I mean, I think it's pretty. I haven't seen enough from the Browns. That's the thing. I know the Browns are probably should be better, but I mean, this is 3 straight years that we're saying should be better, and they're all bought in on Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson hasn't really shown much. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, Mike Tomlin's going above 500. But that's about all in a division where you're now in what I agree with you would be the toughest division in all of football. You're now in that toughest division, and 9-8 just is going to get you last place.
Yep,
that's just the reality.
They're going to be 9-8 and just finishing last. AFC East. What do you have it looking like?
Despite the turnover, I still got Buffalo winning this. Buffalo and Miami both have some big turnover on the defensive side of the football that could make things interesting. The only thing is I have, despite him being called the most overrated player in football, I do have the most faith in Josh Allen. So I got the Buffalo Bills winning. I got the New York Jets. I know that, there's a lot of stuff out there. I got the Jets. I don't trust the Dolphins when things get cold and stuff. I'm one of those guys. So I got the Bills, Jets, Dolphins, and the Patriots will continue to struggle for probably a couple more years to come.
So this is where we have our first difference. I have Dolphins winning the division, Bills finishing in second, Jets finishing in third under 500, and the Patriots in last place. Jets are the worst franchise in football. They're just so bad, and they haven't made the playoffs since I think 2011, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to continue this year. And I think what's really holding them back, Robert Saleh is not a good head coach. He's a good defensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. And I think Hackett's that good. Is going to be that good for the offense. Now I do like Breece Hall, which I have him in 2 of my fantasy leagues. So I'm hoping he's good. But Aaron Rodgers just can't be trusted. And and I don't think that offensive line is going to be good, and he might potentially get hurt again. But I have the Dolphins winning the division and the Bills finishing in second and making one of the 3 wild card spots. Jumping over to the AFC South, I have Texans, Colts, Jaguars, and Titans. I have the Colts being the 3rd wild card team in the AFC, finishing at 10-7, but the Texans winning the division at 11-6. Jaguars finishing at 9-8 and just missing out, and the Titans are not going to be good. Will Levis, I don't think, is good. I know they have some good receivers there, but first-year head coach, I just don't think it's going to be a good season for them. So Texans, Colts, Jaguars, and Titans.
I got it the same way. And I do have the Colts as a final. I have the Jets as a wildcard team and then the Colts as a wildcard team. So I'm a bit higher on the Jets than you and some of the consensus. I get why people don't like them. And Robert Saleh, I agree, is not a good head coach. Joe Douglas came from the old Howie Roseman tree, but hasn't made the same decisions and the right decisions like Howie Roseman does in a lot of cases. So unfortunate there for Douglas, because I like Joe Douglas. I mean, I liked him, and on his way out, I was wishing him the best. I think the Aaron Rodgers decision was an absolute backbreaker.
And trading for Hassan Reddick without having a contract in place.
That too. You definitely need that in place. But back to the AFC South side of it, I agree. The Titans are on their way to rebuilding. They've made some moves that make you think like, oh, they're trying to win, and then there's other moves like Will Levis. But they kind of have to give the keys to Levis and see what they have in him, I guess. But I mean, otherwise they're rebuilding. The Jags are kind of, to me, like the Steelers are kind of like that team you can peg for 9-8, 10-7. But I don't love Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to end up going down as overpaid, because I don't think he has proven enough to have gotten the contract that he got. But they knew that they had to decide then and there, do we want to pay this guy? Are we going to make this move now? Because if not, we're starting from scratch again with a new franchise quarterback type of scenario. So Colts, as long as Richardson stays healthy, I think the Colts are going to be a decent team. Defense is pretty good. The offense, I think, can be really good behind Anthony Richardson. With that dual threat, Jonathan Taylor there, A.D. Mitchell, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman. There's a lot of good things to like there. And the Texans, obviously, they're all in. They're in it to win it. So,
all right, let's move. So my AFC team, well, actually, we'll do that after we go through the NFC. So let's jump over to, we'll save the NFC East for last. Let's jump to the NFC North. I have it being, actually, no, you can go first. Go ahead with the NFC North.
The NFC North, I have it being the Detroit Lions. I got the Green Bay Packers. I got the Chicago Bears, and I got the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are very blah. I really don't know what to think or what to expect. They took when they moved on from Kirk Cousins, I felt that was a really weird move. But and then JJ McCarthy, of course, is getting the old red shirt treatment with the injury with the meniscus injury he suffered. The Bears are going to be a bit better. I don't know if they're going to be fully there, but they're a team that could surprise. I think they're a team that could surprise. I just don't think I'm there that they're going to surprise yet. And then I hate saying it because we're about to preview it, but I like the Green Bay Packers. I think they're going to do pretty good. Detroit Lions, I like a little preview. I don't have them in the Super Bowl, but I know that a lot of people do, and a lot of people think this is going to be like a Chiefs and Lions Super Bowl. But I think it's going to be a decent division. I think it's building up to the next year two under Caleb Williams and stuff. I have a feeling like this division could be a lot better, but that's how I have it going for this year.
I have the same four: Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. I have the Lions and Packers making the playoffs. I have the Bears being 6-11. I don't think they're going to be any good because I don't think Matt Eberflus is a good head coach, and he's going to keep them down. I'm indifferent on Caleb Williams. I know he has all the tools. I just don't know if he has it. It's just weird. I don't know if he has the it factor, if that makes sense. But we'll see. I know they gave him a bunch of weapons. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet. They have a lot of weapons. I just don't see it happening for the Bears this year. But I have the Lions and the Packers making the playoffs. Jumping to the NFC West, I have the 49ers, Rams, Seahawks, and Cardinals. I have the Niners and the Rams making the playoffs out of the NFC West. It's going to be tough. It's weird. We know that when you're coming off of a Super Bowl, you tend to struggle. And I think that this is kind of like I should preface this with saying, if Trent Williams isn't there, that can change. And right now he's not there. And who knows if he's going to play this week. And I know they signed Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel kind of wants a contract. So it's going to be interesting. And next year they're going to have to pay Purdy. So this is the year for the Niners. If they don't do it this year, I don't think they ever will do it. And I just don't think that they're going to be good enough, or that Kyle Shanahan's good enough to get them over the top to win the Super Bowl. But I have them winning the division this year, with the Rams finishing in second place.
Yeah, I have it the exact same way. I agree with you on the 49ers. And I mean, as an Eagles podcast, if you're a 49ers fan, you're probably just going to sit there and say, oh, of course, this is an Eagles opinion. So they're going to say that about the 49ers and their impending collapse. I agree with you. I mean, how many chances can you give? Like at some point, like, I mean, I get it. It's kind of like the discussion that we're having about our head coach. How many times are you going to just make the playoffs and be okay with just making the playoffs? I love Pittsburgh Steelers. How many times can you be 9-8 and just be okay with 9-8 and not getting over any other hump? So I agree with you.
Tomlin did get a contract extension.
We could talk about the decisions teams have made for a whole episode.
I would love Mike Tomlin to be the Eagles head coach, by the way. Just saying.
But I agree with you on the Shanahan front. Like eventually, like if all you're going to do is make, the Super Bowl or usually the conference finals, and that's as far, but you can never make something happen beyond that. I mean, eventually, like you said, these contracts are going to catch up to you. Some of the egos are going to get in the way. You almost had it happen with Brandon Ayuk. You're starting to see it happen with Trent Williams. Deebo Samuel, similar things going to happen. Brock Purdy, how much is he going to be worth if he has another season like last season? Like it's going to be it's such a weird situation in San Francisco. And to me, they seem like a weirdly toxic team, but you can't tell you think it looks it, but then they go out there and they win and they play so well. It's like, okay, maybe it's just weird. To me, it's such a weird environment. Whereas the Jets are outright toxic. The 49ers are not outright toxic. It just feels like they're all in their own ways from being like a true team. And that kind of stands in their way sometimes. I mean, I hope it makes sense. It makes sense in my mind, but
I think I got what you were saying.
And then the LA Rams, yeah, I agree with you there. The Seahawks, I don't know if they're they got a good defense, but that offense I don't know if I can get behind it. And the LA Rams, I think this is going to be, this is starting to become the LA Rams' final hurrah. They're getting older and older, and it just doesn't seem to be going backwards.
I think they're getting young on the defensive side of the ball.
They're getting younger on the defensive side, but they were forced to get younger on the defensive side of the ball with Aaron Donald's departure and some departures that have happened. And then the Cardinals, well, they may come around, but I mean, I kind of get this idea based on some of the comments you made, LJ, that you don't think defensive coaches are good head coaches. So,
well, I mean, DeMeco Ryans is.
Yeah, DeMeco Ryans did a great job, but you look at the teams that we've talked about and who you've said, I don't think this guy's a good head coach, defensive head coach, defensive head coach, defensive head coach, because we all know Jonathan Gannon's not a good head coach. And that might be just pure spite.
And we lost to him last year. I was at that game. Don't remind me. Let's move to the NFC South. Who you got?
This may possibly be the worst division in football. I think that the winner is again going to be 9-8. And I have it being the Atlanta Falcons. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New Orleans Saints, and then the Carolina Panthers. This division I don't know if any team's ever going to figure out how to get over, get their 10-7, get their 11-6, and actually be competitive in the playoffs. But I mean, I get it. Yes, the Eagles lost to Tampa a couple years ago. I get that. It is what it is, and we lost. I get it. But I mean, then they move on, and then they just get beat around. So. I don't know, but I do have the Falcons. I mean, they've made. I like some of the moves. And we've seen Kirk Cousins. I mean, he can win, not always in prime time. Yeah, you got to weigh it there. But I mean, I just think this is anybody's division. Anybody's division, but the Carolina Panthers, pretty much.
I have the Buccaneers winning the division, Falcons finishing in second, Saints in third, Panthers in fourth. But yeah, I also agree that it is going to be probably the worst division in football. When it comes to the Falcons, I just don't think Raheem Morris is going to get head coach, defensive coach. Yes, I get it. I just don't.
Theme.
I don't see it there for him. I mean, I'm happy he's gotten another chance. I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy. I mean, Kyle Pitts, maybe could I finally have a breakout? He doesn't have Arthur Smith calling plays, and Bijan Robinson will probably get used. They have Drake London. They have, I know, Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons at corner, or at safety, AJ Terrell at corner. Like they do have they have some young guys, and they have Calais Campbell, if I'm not mistaken. They traded for what's his name from the Matthew Judon. So like their defense should be good. I don't trust them. But fortunately for them, like they should have 2 wins against the Panthers, potentially 2 wins against the Saints. Like it's a bad division, terrible division. All right. Now let's move to the NFC East, where there's not been a defending division champ win it back-to-back years since the Eagles did it from 2001 to 2004. I have the Eagles winning the division. I have the Cowboys coming in second, but making the playoffs as the last wild card. Yes, I know. It sounds weird for me saying that. The Commanders finishing in third and the Giants being one of the worst teams in football in fourth. I just think that the Eagles, look, this isn't a preview of what I'm predicting for Friday night, but like the Eagles could lose Friday, but be fine. The one thing, and I was going to talk about, I'm going to talk about this a little bit when we preview the game. The one thing I hate about the Eagles Packers being in Brazil, it's like this is a marquee NFC matchup. 2 of the better teams in the NFC, and it's supposed to be an Eagles home game, and it's not going to be a home game. Like this is the type of game you want it to link. If you're going to play at Brazil, and I know they want it to be a marquee game because they're trying to bring all this notoriety to the NFL, to overseas, to other countries, and in Brazil, but like make this the Eagles Panthers, make it the Eagles Steelers, make it something.
We don't see these games in Europe. You don't see the Eagles and Packers in
No.
these European games.
No,
I agree.
The New York games stink. It's like one good team and the Jaguars a lot of the time. But like this is a huge game in the NFC that could have playoff seeding implications, and the Eagles have to face them in Brazil in what's considered a home game.
I think this game, like if it was later in the season, would probably have, and this game may, when we look back in this season, have major playoff ramifications. Just later in the season, you see them.
We're going to talk about that. We'll save all that because I agree with you. That's why I'm not happy that the game is being played in Brazil week 1. All right.
But I mean, to quickly touch on what you said, I have the exact same outlook. I got Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. I have the Giants being out. Like I don't even know if I can give them 3 wins. Like
I've done a 2-15. So.
I can't find a way to get them to that 3rd win, but they might surprise you because of week 17. They might get those 2 wins, but before 18. Sorry. They may get those 2 wins before week 18, and then in week 18, they just get to go all out on some team that's playing their backups and get that 3rd win. That might be the only one. What?
The Eagles play the Giants week 18.
I know, I get it, but you know what I mean. If the Eagles are locked in and in the playoffs, and
even Kenny Pickett should be able to beat them.
Oh well,
Kenny Pickett and Johnny Wilson and EJ Jenkins and
Britton Covey
and Will Shipley, like they should be able to beat the Giants. All right, so what's your 1 through 7 in the AFC and 1 through 7 in the NFC?
My 1 through 7 is gonna be Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, Buffalo, and then I got Cincinnati, the New York Jets, and the Indianapolis Colts for the AFC.
So my AFC is the Chiefs, Ravens, Dolphins, Texans, Bengals, Bills, Colts.
And then in the NFC, I got Detroit, Philadelphia, San Fran, Atlanta, because we have to. And then for the wildcard teams, I got Green Bay, Dallas, and the Rams.
I have the Eagles with the number 1 seed, Lions, Niners, Bucks, Packers, Rams, Cowboys.
I mean, I hate being the guy that's putting the Lions in first because I kind of think they're a little bit overrated. But I do think that they do have one of the better teams in the NFC. So I do have to say that. I hate that I have to do it, but
let's jump to who do you have in the conference championship?
Oh, boy, this is where it gets tough.
I have mine written down if you want to think for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the AFC, I have the Ravens and the Chiefs. And in the NFC, I have the Eagles and the Lions.
Yeah, I have the Texans and the Chiefs. I'm pretty high on the Texans over the Ravens. Maybe the Ravens make it over the hump. I love the Ravens defense. I love the Ravens offense. It just feels like they might stumble. But we could see the Texans stumble. It'll be interesting to see, what a second year CJ Stroud looks like. And if he can keep that momentum going. So I got the Texans and the Chiefs in the AFC.
And the NFC?
And in the NFC, I actually have it being Green Bay, Philadelphia.
Okay.
I actually have it going that way. So a
week one is rematch. A preview of the NFC Championship game. Who do you have meeting in the Super Bowl?
I have Kansas City over Green Bay. I actually have Green Bay. I'm pretty high on Green Bay. I think they have a good young core, and if this isn't the year, then I'll still probably be high on them next year. And maybe in years to come. I think they're balanced on both sides of the ball. But I do have KC winning. And I know last year, I think I had neither prediction right. I don't think either of us got anything right about the Super Bowl last year. So, and it's hard to make this prediction because I try not to be a homer to Philadelphia because I do want to see Philadelphia there. Obviously, I do think we have a team that can be there. But I got KC and Green Bay.
I have the Eagles and the Ravens in the Super Bowl. So the December 1st game that I'm going to be going to in Baltimore is going to be a preview of the Super Bowl. And I have the Eagles beating the Ravens in New Orleans to win the Super Bowl. Call me a homer if you want to. I don't care. But I have the Eagles, Ravens in the Super Bowl.
I feel it's a bad omen. In prior years when we've made our predictions in weeks, we pick the Eagles, they lose. When we don't pick the Eagles, they win. Like it feels like an omen to put them in the finals. But I mean, overall, like if we just want one quick final reaction to everything, the NFL is in a good place as far as competitive goes. I mean, I get it. You got your NFC South that's completely uncompetitive, but then you have your AFC North, which is like uber competitive, and every week's going to be so fun to watch.
And we have to face the AFC North this year.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think the NFL is in a good spot. I think you got a good half of the league that's really competitive, makes the playoffs super interesting. You never know what to expect. And here I am pumping Goodell's wheels on the product that's been put out there. But, I mean, let's just face it. The NFL's done a better job than the MLB. Look at the White Sox. Their attendance is like not even 100 people. And then you look over at the NBA and you can buy championships. Like you got teams that are just funneling money. And I think the NHL and the NFL have two of the best products right now. And the NFL obviously by far without argument is the best product out there.
Yeah. Well, remember, I mean, a lot of people used to say the NBA should start the season on Christmas, but now the NFL has overtaken them on Christmas because even if Christmas is on a Wednesday this year, and guess what? There's going to be 2 or 3 NFL games. I think 2 games. Like the NFL is taking over when it comes to every game of the week. It doesn't matter what the day of the week is. The NFL is taking over. So like every other sport should just wait until after the NFL. Like
the
interesting thing is going to be
Thursday, Friday, Sunday,
Monday.
The
interesting thing is going to be college football has playoff CFP games going up against NFL games. That will be interesting because I love college football. Not as much as I love the NFL, but I love college football. It's a 12-team playoff now. That will be interesting to see what the ratings look like when you compare the 12-team playoff, some of these bowl games, some of these quarterfinal matchups and semifinal matchups going up against NFL games. That'll be a true test, like because I think college football is more popular than the NBA, than the NHL, than Major League Baseball. Granted, we see it now early in the college football season when they go up against MLB games, but that'll be a true test of how strong like. Football is king. Obviously, it's just going to be a matter of like what do the ratings for these CFP games look like in December, leading into the national championship game in January. All right, so I have the Eagles, Ravens. You have the Chiefs, Packers in the Super Bowl. One of those, that means probably none of those 4 teams are going to make the Super Bowl. Is what we're getting at. So it'll be the Lions and Texans or something like that. It'll be something weird. All right, Week 1 has arrived, as we had mentioned early on. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers travel to Brazil to face off on the first time the NFL is opened on a Friday night, I think ever, if I'm not mistaken. So you have the
Well,
Ravens.
there's a Thursday game still.
Well, no, I know, but they've never had a Friday night game on opening weekend.
You might be right. Yeah, I think you're right on that.
So we have the Ravens Chiefs on Thursday night, and then the Eagles Packers on Friday night, and then obviously the Sunday slate, and then Monday night football being the Jets and the Niners. So, looking at this matchup, we know that the Eagles have a lot of firepower on offense. The Packers have they have a new defensive coordinator. Their defense is, they got Xavier McKinney. They have Jair Alexander, Preston Smith, if I'm not mistaken. They still have
Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary.
They have a lot of guys, a lot of speed, a lot of ferocity on that side of the ball. What are the Eagles going to be able to take advantage of to try to score points and score enough points to win this game against the Packers?
We talk. The comments been made. If AJ Brown's not open, if you run down the course, like how are you going to be able to defend all these weapons one by one as the game goes on? I get it. You got Xavier McKinney who can do a good job against Dallas Goedert. You got linebackers who can probably give a good run at Saquon Barkley. You got Jair Alexander who one-on-one can go up against, AJ Brown, but then you got Eric Stokes. You got Keyshawn Nixon as a nickelbacker. Like eventually you find a weakness and the Eagles are going to have to exploit that weakness, find the guy who's just not on their game, which could be anybody this week. But I think that's the thing that the Eagles can exploit, where the Packers, I like the Green Bay Packers. Like, obviously, I have them going to the Super Bowl. And I like Christian Watson. He struggled with injuries. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, they all showed that they can have really good games. They have a good tight end duo. I like Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. And then you got Josh Jacobs. They got a lot of good guys. I don't think that they're anywhere near, at least not from an established standpoint, near the level that the Philadelphia Eagles weaponry is on offense. And I do think up front, the defense is better for the Green Bay Packers, but on the back end, I really do. I really am having a lot more faith in Darius Slay, Isaiah Rodgers, Kenyon Mitchell, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Reed Blankenship than I do on the Green Bay Packers secondary side of things. So I think it all comes back to how is a team going to defend? Okay, AJ Brown's covered. Okay, look to Devontae Smith. Maybe he's open. Jahan Dotson, Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts and his legs. Like what? How is a team? This is the first chance we get to see. Can this offense function in that way that Jalen Hurts can go through his progressions, make the right choices, and there always be someone open like we think?
I think the key is going to be the offensive line versus the defensive line on both sides of the football. Because you mentioned all the weapons that the Eagles have. None of that matters if you can't protect Jalen Hurts and he doesn't have time to get the football out of his hands. And then I like Xavier McKinney. I wanted the Eagles to sign McKinney. I think that would have been cool. I don't think, obviously, if they would have got McKinney, they wouldn't have brought back CJ GJ. Probably not. You never know. That would have been a fun CJ GJ and Xavier McKinney. Speaking of that, Xavier McKinney talked highly of Saquon this week, saying they were really close with the Giants. And they've talked throughout camp and whatnot, just, checking in with each other. So that's kind of cool. And you get to see the two former teammates going up against each other. But you were mentioning, you would think that Jair Alexander is probably going to go up against AJ Brown, which means Eric Stokes against Devontae Smith. That means does Javon Bullard or Isaiah McDuffie go up against Jahan Dotson? And that means Xavier McKinney potentially goes up against Dallas Goedert. Then which of the linebackers? Is it going to be Quay Walker or is it going to be, let's say, Eric, Wilson? Will one of them have to cover Saquon out the backfield? There are a lot of weapons on this Eagles offense, but we haven't seen them play yet. We didn't see them in preseason. We have an idea of what the offense is going to look like just because of the years of coaching that Kellen Moore has had with Dallas and with the Chargers. But even with Dallas, I don't know if he's had this many weapons to go with. So, and look, I know that they had a lot of weapons in Dallas when he was there, but I mean, that's going to be fun. And it's going to be what the best part is going to be not seeing AJ or Devontae staying on one side of the field, running like 3 routes the entire game. They're going to be in motion. They're going to be moving. They're going to run the entire route tree. And I think that's going to be good. And for somebody like Devontae, who might be the best route runner, might be one of the best route runners in football, like that's going to be huge for him. And like he has a chance to go off and have a huge year for the Eagles, and I hope so. I have him on one of my fantasy teams. So maybe
well, and I know there's a lot of people who are saying like as a hot take, which I don't even think it's a hot take anymore. Don't be surprised if Devontae Smith is the leading wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it can be outright true. And it doesn't have to mean A.J. Brown had a bad season. Yeah. It can just mean there's purely a lot of weapons. And the one weapon that's left open more often or is able to get open more often is Devontae Smith, which can be true. He is an amazing route runner. He is an amazing 50-50 catcher. If I was trusting throwing a ball up to anyone, it would be Devontae Smith. Some of the catches he's made is just outright nasty. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. I kind of preface it by saying, you know, I really like that front 4, that front 7 that they have in Green Bay. Rashawn Gary, TJ Slayton, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith. That is a very, very impressive front 4. And we have a fairly new right side of the line in Cam Jurgens and Mekhi Becton. And we've talked about, okay, Mekhi Becton looked really good. He's massive, but you don't see right guards this size. Can Jalen Hurts work that side of the field? Is he going to have to move a bit to get away from having to look over his frame? How's Cam Jurgens going to look? We're so used to it's going to be so weird not seeing Kelce trot out there for that first snap of the game because we've become so accustomed to it. And now it's going to be Cam Jurgens. We know Kelce scouted Jurgens. Kelce was the one who pounded the table for Jurgens. Cam Jurgens is there. It's time to see, can he step into the role? And no, we're not saying from day one he has to be able to be Kelce, but he's definitely got big shoes to fill, and it's going to be very hard for him to likely fill them in his first couple of seasons there. I have faith in Cam Jurgens. I like Cam Jurgens. I like Mekhi Becton. I wasn't expecting him to be the starting right guard. But at the end of the day, they're going with what they think is their best offensive line. But you are going up against a very good front 4 with 2 brand new pieces to your offensive line.
Yeah, so I mean, and Kenny Clark is really. I think he got a contract extension this offseason, so that's going to be key. Like he's not going up against Kelce; he's going to be up against, potentially head up sometimes on Jurgens. So hopefully Jurgens is ready for that battle. On the defensive side of the ball for the Eagles, we've talked about it. Like the one question mark, which we rarely ever have question marks about this, pass rush. Are they going to be able to get after the quarterback? Jordan Love is good. Like he started off slow last year, but the second half of last year, he was good and had a huge game in the playoff game against Dallas. Josh Jacobs taking over for Aaron Jones. I loved Aaron Jones with Green Bay. So this is going to be interesting to see how Josh Jacobs is going to do, and what this Eagles front 4 or front 7 is going to be able to do. Are they going to be able to stop him? Who's going to cover him out the backfield? Is it going to be Dean? Is it going to be Bond? Is it going to be Devin White? Excuse me. And then you mentioned the receivers, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed. They've done Tavion Wicks as well. Like, so they have a lot of guys, and they don't have a number, like a legit number 1. They don't have Devontae Adams. Like, you knew who the number 1, if they needed a big play, they were going to. They can go to any one of those guys. So Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell, Isaiah Rodgers, Keely Ringo, they all have to be ready. Avonte Maddox, they all have to be ready to be targeted. Now their tight end, Luke Musgraves, he's okay. He's not great, but you line him up against the Nakobe Dean or Zach Bond, maybe he can take advantage of that. And their offensive line, I mean, I think Jordan Davis is in for a huge monster year for the Eagles. So hopefully he's able to get off to a big start. And I think he can against this offensive line, but it's going to be key. Like, is Vic Fangio going to put the corners, like, is he going to have them playing off? Is he going to have them playing up? Like, if you're going to play off, Jordan Love's going to get rid of the football quick. And that's what we've become accustomed to over the last couple of years. So you got to put the corners in a bump and run type of coverage sometimes to allow the pass rush to get there. Because if Jordan Love's getting rid of the ball in a second and a half, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, like, you're not giving your pass rush a chance. So that's going to be what the Eagles have to do.
Yeah, I mean it'll be interesting because we've seen the wannabe Vic Fangio defenses in prior years, and now we have the real Vic Fangio defense, a
Yes.
true Vic Fangio defense. What's it going to actually look like? How often are we going to see like you said the different types of coverages that we're going to see? How often are we going to see them? Are we going to see them tied up? Are we going to see them play off a little bit? A little bump and run coverage? Like what are we going to see? One thing I loved about the preseason was the pressure from the linebacker position. We were getting after quarterbacks based on that. Of course, we didn't have Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. Bryce Huff wasn't out there a whole lot. Josh Sweat wasn't out there. So we weren't seeing those guys. But I mean, you were seeing guys like Jeremiah Trotter and Nakobe Dean getting runs at quarterbacks. So that could be really interesting to see how the linebacker position is used in this defense. And I've spoken about it throughout the preseason that I was really interested to see what happens with the linebackers and how the linebackers are used in this offense or defense. So, and the pass rush is concerning. We don't know what we really have in Bryce Huff and what he's going to be able to bring, going from a 50% snaps played to you're going to be asking this guy based on his contract to go 85-90% of snaps and be a guy that you can lean on a lot. And then Josh Sweat, I mean, he had Hassan Reddick across from him last season, and Josh Sweat has this tendency of appearing and disappearing. Can he prove this is a contract year? This is a big year for Josh Sweat. He needs to prove that he can be a reliable pass rushing option this year. And then, of course, Jalen Carter, I agree with you. I think Jalen Carter is going to have a great season. He was just becoming accustomed last year to the NFL. But the bigger concerns for me are, we're moving to a 3-4 offense. Our defense, it looks a lot different than what we've had in prior seasons, where it was more of a 4-3 approach. What can Milton Williams do? We know we want him to be the next guy up in the contract. What can these three, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter, do all side by side, especially Jordan Davis? Jordan Davis seems like the wild card. He's a guy you want to do good. We talk about wanting to see more out of, and we just haven't been able to see it from him. And I think if Jordan Davis can start to come into his own this year, this front three can be super disruptive and help the pass rush immensely. But if it's just Jalen Carter or just Milton Williams or just one of them on in a given game, then the pass rush could struggle.
Yeah, and then before we get into our keys to the game and players to watch, special teams with the new dynamic kickoff, Keyshawn Nixon for the Packers could be. He's a really good kick returner, and the Eagles didn't show much in terms of how they may defend kickoff returns. I don't know if Elliott's just going to boom it through the end zone and let them start at the 30, but that's going to be the Eagles when they did allow returns, they had a couple of big returns against them, especially in that Baltimore game. So that should be something to watch. And we think Isaiah Rodgers is going to return. It's going to be Rodgers and Gainwell potentially returning kicks for the Eagles. We'll see what happens. Again, will the Packers and Whelan, their kicker, Braden Narvison, is their place kicker. Will they just kick it through the end zone, or will they just see, this is the first week, Thursday night when it's the Ravens Chiefs, it's going to be interesting just to see how that gets played out. Our team's just going to boom it through the end zone and start at 30. And the NFL has said they reserve the right to change rules in terms of that. So if that's all teams are doing, it wouldn't shock me if they say, all right, you're going to kick it through the end zone. Teams will start at the 35, force them to kind of kick it into that end zone or kick it to where the ball can be returned. So special teams has a chance to play a key role. Obviously, Jake Elliott being one of the best kickers in the league. Don't see him. So I know in the preseason, his first field goal was a miss. I don't see that happening again, hopefully, knock on wood. But he's obviously one of the best. Braden Mann's good. So special teams has a chance to be key in week one. And in a stadium, nobody really knows what it's going to do win-wise because they've never played there NFL-wise.
Yeah, no, special teams will be interesting. I'm really intrigued to see what the dynamic kickoff rule is like. Just like you said, I want to see how it's used. I hope that it's used strategically and in a way that we see that similar rate. I get it. You were playing with third strings, fourth string. You were worried about injuring those guys in the preseason, but I hope we see, I don't think you're going to see an 80% rate, but if it gets closer to a 50% rate, that makes things a lot more interesting. But obviously,
Wasn't it like
you do
20% last year?
it was 20% last year. Yeah. So I mean, even if you see like even a 10% increase, like get to the 30 to 40% mark, I think the NFL will be happy to see that because I think they want to see more of that and they know that makes a game more exciting. And we saw a lot more excitement in the preseason. The most exciting part of the preseason was seeing those kickoff returns and some of the big returns and some of the plays that came with that dynamic kickoff rule. So it gives a real chance, like you said, to let special teams shine and put their offenses in a lot better position and put defenses on their heels right away. So it'll be interesting to see how that's used. Obviously, Britton Covey will do punt returns again. He was one of the best punt returners last year, so we get to see him again. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they mix things up at kick return. Their first depth chart had Rodgers and Gainwell. So we'll see how that goes and if it's this dynamic kickoff rule ends up being dynamic.
Yeah. So before we get to our prediction, 2 players that I'm looking for. I like to do one on offense, one on defense. Jalen Carter is going to be my defensive player. Again, I mentioned how I think he's in store for a big year. And he started off the year last year really good and kind of hit that rookie wall. I think he's going to be able to sustain that all year. I'm not saying he's going to be in the defensive player of the year running, but definitely Pro Bowl, potentially all pro running. So I'm looking for Jalen Carter to have a big game, helping sustain, Josh Jacobs and get after Jordan Love. And on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to go Devontae Smith. You mentioned it. Like, Devontae has a chance to take the step as the best receiver on this team. And look, A.J. Brown's getting paid like it. He's the 3rd highest paid receiver in the NFL, $32 million a year. And Devontae's only making $25 million a year. I wish I was only making $25 million a year. But I think Devontae's in store for a huge year as well. And like you mentioned, he goes up and gets every ball thrown to him. His route running is one of the best in the league. So I'm expecting Devontae. Like, it's going to be tough for Eric Stokes or whoever it is that's going to be covering him to cover him. And if the offensive line can give Jalen Hurts time, Devontae Smith should eat. So I'm going Jalen Carter and Devontae Smith.
For me, I was debating 2 guys here, and it was going to be Huff or Williams. And I'm going to go with Williams on this one because there's been so much talk about Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and it's almost been like this, like we want Milton Williams to get paid, but he's about to be an anchor of this 3-4 defense as a defensive edge in it. So I want to see make Howie pay you. Let's see what you got. You got Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter beside you. We've kind of people have brushed over Milton Williams and not really talked about him a whole lot. It's time to see him. He's got to play. These 3 are going to be so important up front, but it's about all 3 of them in a 3-4 defense, not just one of them, not just 2 of them. All 3 need to work together as a unit to help the pass rush and to help open things up for the defense. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm going with Milton Williams because this is his year. It's time to get paid. Make Howie pay you early so that we can save a little bit of money and also show that you can be a focal point of that front 3 on defense. Offensively, I mean, I would have obviously went Devontae Smith. I think he's due for a really big game. But I am actually going to go with Mekhi Becton for this one. I think that it's going to be important that, we talked about how good the front 4 is of this Green Bay Packers team and how, 2 out of our 5 players are brand new starters this year. One of them is a guy who would not play any other position in New York. And now here he is at a brand new position of right guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jeff Stoutland clearly went and said, Mekhi, I trust you. I have faith. I like you a lot. I want you to do this for me, and I will repay you someday by moving you to a rightful spot maybe. I don't know how Jeff Stoutland said it, but Jeff Stoutland said, you're in Stoutland U now. I'm going to make you a great offensive lineman.
I think Becton had said something like he was in a really toxic place the last couple of years. Yeah, that toxic place was the Jets. Let's be honest. Anybody would be.
True. Exactly. It's so true. But I could have picked Cam Jurgens or Mekhi Becton here, but it's going to be interesting because they're side by side. It's not like it's a left tackle in a center or a right tackle in a center. You have those 2 who are going to be manning that right side for you. And if Mekhi Becton gets beat, Cam Jurgens has to step up. If Jurgens gets beat, Becton's got to be there. Becton's also got to try and help out Lane Johnson, who's usually covering some of the best edge rushers in all of football. So, there's going to be some important assignments.
I think that helps.
It's going to be interesting.
That helps Becton too because Johnson really doesn't need help all the time.
I mean, it is a good thing. He doesn't really need help, so it is good that they can really focus on the interior of the right side. But it's going to be interesting because I could have picked Jurgens or Becton on this one because it's a big hole if the two of them are off. It's a big hole that they're going to struggle, and Jalen Hurts could struggle with if that hole is constantly under pressure and collapsing. So I'm going with Mekhi Becton on for the offensive side.
All right, so we're at our first prediction of the year. Now that we have gotten through preseason, we know what the rosters look like. We know health-wise what each team looks like. What's your thoughts and your score prediction on this game?
I hate these traveling games. Like, they're the hardest to predict. I mean, you go to most of the Europe games, like they can barely combine to be like 30 points between two teams sometimes. So, and it's week one. So you're traveling to Brazil. Is week one. You got the double whammy. I'm going, and I know I feel like a Green Bay Packers homer, but I'm going the Green Bay Packers winning this one. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I don't think it's going to be ugly in some form or fashion, in like big plays being given up, offenses and defenses that haven't really played a whole lot. Like Jordan Love made that one big play in preseason, and then they said, all right, we've seen enough. And I don't think he played again after that. So, I mean, for me, I think it's just going to be a lot of a lot of guys getting used to new systems and a little bit of the growing pains. And I think that the Green Bay Packers are taking this one. I mean, I'm going 24-20 on this one. I think it's going to be close, but that's my pick.
Okay. The Eagles have, looking at their schedule, this is considered a home game, but it's not at the Link. Week 2 is Monday Night Football at the Link. Then they don't have their next home game until their first Sunday home game until week 5. So, it's so crazy that there's just not much partying happening at the Link. Granted, they are doing a watch party on Friday night at the Link. You can watch it from the seats and the big board. So I think that's actually kind of pretty cool. It's not going to be the same, obviously, as watching them on the field. But yeah, the schedule makers didn't do the Eagles much justice in terms of the home schedule early on. But at the end of the year, I mentioned it, after week 12, they don't get on a plane. So that'll be fun for the Eagles. But in terms of this game, I think that both defenses are probably going to struggle. I think it's going to be more high scoring than you do. I think Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts are going to look good, and Hurts, I think, is going to look healthy. We talked about it at the end of the year. Shocked that nothing came out about him getting a knee surgery or a knee cleanup of any kind. I'm really shocked. I definitely thought that was going to happen, and it didn't. But I have it being 31-27 Eagles. But I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be up and down the field. I don't think it's going to be as ugly as you think. I think both offenses are going to look good, and I just think both defenses, it's going to be whatever defense can make one stop here and there. And I think the Eagles will make that stop, but it's going to be a battle. And these are two of the best teams in the NFC. That's why I hate that this game is in Brazil. Like, I bet you 1,000% that if the game was supposed to be in Lambeau and the Packers were going to be the home team in Brazil, that they wouldn't have faced the Eagles. 1,000% it would have been the Eagles, because they think like Eagles Packers Lambeau Field should be this big spectacle, just like Eagles Packers at Lincoln Financial Field should be a spectacle, but it's not. It's in Brazil. So I have the Eagles winning 31-27. You have the Packers winning 24-20.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a good game. I'm just glad that, football's back. Here we go. Buckle up. Let's, the Eagles media isn't going to overreact to game one. I mean,
well, fortunately, they can't tweet in Brazil, so we don't have to worry about that.
This is true. They cannot. So we'll get it in this whole flood of things on like Sunday, when they all come back Sunday morning, or when they all get back from their flights. I don't know if they're going to leave right away, but Saturday or Sunday, we're just going to get a flood of overreaction just to ruin.
Unless they use like a VPN or something. I don't know how it's going to work, but apparently, so I don't know if it's
there's major penalties if you're caught.
Yeah, like $10,000 a day you can get fined. $10,000 a day, and there's also these issues with the wildfires and whatnot. So it's probably not the best time to be playing in Brazil, but Who cares? They're going to play. We have to get over it. At least Sunday. Like Sunday can be a Sunday ticket day or NFL Red Zone day. No stressing about the Eagles. So that'll be good. Our final thoughts before we finish up.
Let's go. I'm ready. Yeah, I am so ready for this. I cannot wait. I think it's going to be a good season. Like I said, my favorite professional sport, and there's like you can forget about tiers 2 through like 9. Like the NFL is there, tier 1, and then tier 10 can be whatever.
They always put out they always put out like the top 100 shows watched per year. Like 95 of them shows are NFL games. It's crazy. Yep. Like this year might be different because there's in the US there's we have the election coming up, so the debate will be highly watched. But like no other sport, like an NFL preseason game does higher ratings than a World Series game, or does higher ratings than an NBA Finals game. That's how much NFL is king in America. Like, and I've asked people this before, like, because we always talk about the Super Bowl, and there's like, they get like 300 million people. I don't know if that's true, how many people watch the Super Bowl, whatever it is. But like, if you're the one person that doesn't watch the Super Bowl, what do you do? Like, everybody else is watching the Super Bowl. What the heck do you do? Like, I never understood that, but neither here nor there. Thank you all for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour as the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFL are set to kick off week 1 this week in the National Football League. I have the Eagles hoisting their second Lombardi trophy, and Connor has the Chiefs hoisting their third consecutive. I believe you picked the Chiefs Lombardi trophy. I have the Eagles beating the Packers. Connor has the Packers beating the Eagles because he's a big Packers fan this year. But yes, so as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRaw54. Follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.